Hi friends, here's my recap of Friday afternoon part 2 session of the Jehovah's Witness Annual Convention, Powerful by Faith. Friends, this session is entitled Imitate the Faithful, Not the Faithless. And it's truly unbelievable. This session is a crash course in cult programming. And stick around to the end, friends, because we're going to talk about some hope. But so many people have asked us who were Jehovah's Witnesses, well, why did you stay in? How could you stay in? How come you couldn't see clearly? Well, this is why. This is going to give you an idea of why. But anyway, so this symposium, they're going to try to lead their followers to believe that they're really talking about the faith of Abel, Enoch, Noah, Moses, and Jesus, not Cain, Lamech, and the rest of them. What I've done, I think this was nearly 2 hours long, or an hour and 20 minutes long, I can't remember. What I've done is I've removed all of the nonsense. Now, they do talk about the good things about these faithful men of God, but that's not what it's about. Take a look and see for yourself, friends. I'm going to start with Robert Serenko's, a portion of his talk from the end. I've brought it to the beginning, and then everything else will be in order. Take a look.
Well, what have we learned from this symposium? 2 things. First, we must reject the course of faithless ones, like Cain, Lamech, Noah's neighbors, Pharaoh, and the Pharisees. Second, we need to imitate Jehovah's faithful servants, like Abel, Enoch, Noah, Moses, and Jesus' disciples. If we do, then we can enjoy living forever as a friend of Jehovah.
All right, so that's the takeaway of this Friday afternoon part 2 session of the convention. Friends, listen, we need to replace the lies of Watchtower and no longer allow them to have any power over our minds at all. So moving along, I have increased the speed by 0.25% to make it easier because they speak so slow. Back to the video.
Your generous donations make this possible. Donations can be made online.
Jehovah is a miracle worker. I want you children to look at the events that are being described and see if you can guess who was involved, and see if we can identify individuals who were involved in those miracles. How about defeated kingdoms? Did you come up with someone? Let's talk about Gideon. We like Gideon. He reminds us of us. He wasn't exactly brimming with confidence. And I am the most insignificant in my father's house. With Jehovah's help, Gideon did the impossible. With 300 men, he defeated an army of 135,000. What's the lesson for us? With Jehovah on our side, we are never outnumbered. Now, you children, I'm sure you're going to get this next one. Verse 33, stopped the mouths of lions. Who did that? Well, it was the same one who helped Gideon defeat the Midianites. It was Jehovah. But what was the circumstance? Well, you know, it was when Daniel was thrown into the lion's pit. Now, when Daniel was condemned to die, he didn't know for sure that Jehovah was going to rescue him. Daniel had been condemned to die once before. Now, wait a minute, let's think about that. Daniel had been condemned to die once before. They would all be put to death. And Daniel is once more facing death. Death by a lion. But what about us today? What's the takeaway? What's the lesson? Today, Satan is walking about like a roaring lion, seeking to devour someone. We may never know how often Jehovah shuts the mouth of that lion, how often Jehovah protects his people as a group from Satan. When we're working from door to door, for example, it's dangerous out there. And if someone does lose his life while in Jehovah's service or at a meeting, and it has happened, his loved ones can be sure of 2 things. First of all, their loved one did not lose Jehovah's approval. And I'm sure your kids are going to guess this one. Verse 34, quenched the force of fire. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego refused to eat those foods, and they asked to be given vegetables and water instead. Now, for some of you children, just the thought of having to eat vegetables all the time is probably quite a test. Now, they were facing death. Well, you know what happened. They were thrown into the fiery furnace. But God sent his angel to protect them. What's the takeaway? What's the lesson? Today, many brothers are facing the heat of adversity. Russia, for example. Now, many brothers have been given long prison sentences because they won't bow down to the state. Now, Jehovah doesn't prevent this from happening any more than he prevented Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego from being thrown into the furnace. But he does help them. What do we notice about them as they're being led off to prison? They're smiling. They're serene. They're at peace. Jehovah opened the attendant's eyes, and he saw, and look, the mountainous region was full of horses and more chariots of fire all around Elisha. What's the takeaway? What's the lesson for us? Well, one day, we'll be faced with hosts of modern-day Syrians. And what's going to help us to remain calm, unafraid? We'll look heavenward, and with our eyes of faith, we'll see myriads of angels encamped all around us. We know that Jehovah will do the right thing, whatever is in harmony with his will. In times of ethnic cleansing, how often do we read of brothers and sisters who risk their lives to hide fellow believers who happen to be from another tribe? Brother Johansson was a missionary serving in Malawi at a time when the country was experiencing a tremendous political unrest and violence. Now, he and a young African brother set out to check on the welfare of witnesses in another part of the country. But along the way, they encountered a soldier who wasn't friendly. He said to the African brother, "I have to shoot the white man." He was serious. As he raised his gun to fire, the young African brother thrust himself between the gunman and Brother Johansson and said, shoot me instead." Well, that soldier was so touched by the love of our young African brother that he put his gun down. When you hear experiences like that, it makes you proud to be part of Jehovah's organization. And why is it that Jehovah is gathering us into an organization? Now, when you hear Isaiah 43:10, you say, "I know that. It's about you are my witnesses," says Jehovah. And that's true, but we're going to focus on another part of the verse. So Isaiah 43 and verse 10. "You are my witnesses, declares Jehovah, yes, my servant whom I have chosen." Now notice this, "so that you may know and have faith in me." Before we can have faith in Jehovah, we have to get to know him. We have to learn about his powerful works, those past and those present. He's promised to bring about a righteous new world, and we can take that promise to the bank. And through prayer and association with his organization, we can experience the modern-day miracles that Jehovah is performing. The more we know about Jehovah, the more we'll love him. The more we love him, the more we'll want to tell others about him. The more we preach, the stronger our faith will become.
So what type of an organization speaks so much about death? Splain here is addressing the children. We really do need to lift these people up in prayer, the ones who are indoctrinated and enslaved by this evil organization, no doubt.
As humans, we are designed with the ability to imitate what we see and hear.
All right, well, what this guy just said is intentional. It's all a part of cult programming. He said we were all designed with the ability to imitate what we see and hear. Now, why would he say that? Why would he say imitate? I want you to keep that in mind as we move along.
Because we are living in a time when our faith will be tested in many ways. You and I must take steps to build up or strengthen our faith so that we can protect ourselves against the onslaught of tests and trials we are likely to face. The Bible describes Abel as a righteous man. He built up a record of living according to Jehovah's standards. But his family, however, did not. We're well familiar with his parents, Adam and Eve. They both rebelled against Jehovah. And his older brother Cain, well, he was not a positive role model. When you look at Adam, Eve, and Cain, who all displayed a lack of faith in Jehovah, can you imagine what that family dynamic must have been like for faithful Abel? The tension, hostility, resentment, lack of spiritual discussions? Our faith may likewise be tested by the actions of those who choose not to serve Jehovah. For God approved his gifts, and although he died, he still speaks through his faith. Abel remained steadfast when under trial. He didn't let the actions of his family affect his faith, and we can't let the actions of others affect ours. We must never allow something that another person says or does to make us feel ashamed of being one of Jehovah's Witnesses. So be ready. Be quick to identify yourself as one of Jehovah's Witnesses. Jehovah warns Cain about his attitude, and he urges him to turn to doing good. But just like his faithless parents, Cain determined he knew what was best for himself, and his actions led to the murder of his brother. We may go through situations where, due to imperfection, we don't always use the best judgment, or it causes us to develop a negative attitude. But when the matter is brought to our attention, how will we respond? You see, let's not imitate the faithless example of Cain.
Do you see the programming here, friends? I don't remember it being like this when I was in. I remember it being about Armageddon all the time and fear, but I don't remember this. But maybe it was, and I was just programmed. So listen, Gary Bro is up next, and his favorite word starts with a V. Check it out.
Without warning, our faith could suddenly be tested by how we react in a violent encounter. Yes, our faith may be tested as Enoch's was. Ungodliness and violence were commonplace before the flood, and the scriptures clearly indicate how people reacted. We are told that the faithful man Enoch chose to walk with God. So when he was threatened, he looked to Jehovah for security. On the other hand, Lamech, a descendant of the murderer Cain, opted to provide his own security. This led to killing a man in supposed self-defense. Now, Enoch and the killer Lamech both lived in a violent world, but their violence reaction plans were totally different. As we descend deeper into the last days, people will become more desperate and violence will only escalate. In the following dramatization, let's see how reacting to violence could suddenly become a personal test of faith in Jehovah.
My son barely escaped the gangs. Again. We're the only ones without a gun. I don't want to keep a gun for protection. But how else can I protect my family?
In today's violent society, even in the perceived safest of neighborhoods, we could have a similar experience. If so, how can we imitate Enoch's faith? Jehovah hates violence. We must reject violence as an option. Violent thoughts can lead to violent actions without...
Violent thoughts can lead to violent actions.
So we're encouraged to conceal ourselves if we sense danger and avoid situations that may become violent. Avoid violent entertainment. It frequently portrays a violent response when a character's safety is threatened. All sorts of objects or weapons are depicted as strategies
to kill or overpower the opponents.
He never wanted to be guilty of murder. Preparing a response that includes the use of weapons could result in taking a life. If a Christian takes reasonable steps to defend himself or his property, he would do everything in his power to avoid taking a human life and become blood guilty. It's well established that when weapons are displayed, situations usually escalate with tragic outcomes. Planning to use a deadly weapon could effectively dismiss Jehovah's Spirit from our presence. To pull away from Jehovah is the last thing we want to do in a dangerous situation, as wisdom is better than weapons. In other words, being armed cannot match wisdom. The prudent course is to trust in Jehovah, not weapons. Isn't it true? Violent struggles often begin with a heated exchange of words. So calmness can often diffuse anger and deflect violent conflicts.
I do have faith in God's promises, but if a gun is what I need to protect my family, won't Jehovah understand? No, I couldn't do that. I'm not the first to face a violent world.
His faith in God's promises helped him to look to Jehovah for security instead of a gun. So now, prior to a violent confrontation, what can we do to be sure our reaction plan will be pleasing to Jehovah? Imitate Enoch in these 4 ways. Build our faith and confidence in Jehovah now before we are tested in a violent situation. Reject violent thoughts. Don't allow the violent movies or violent video games that are sponsored by the devil to train your children or yourselves on how to react in a violent confrontation. Reject the idea that you will prepare yourselves with weapons and fearlessly keep preaching as Enoch did. In this way, even if we find ourselves in a violent situation, our violence reaction plan will allow us to imitate Enoch.
Do you see what remains when you remove all of the fluff that's meant to distract and confuse? Our friends and family members are ingesting this poison. Those who are still indoctrinated, friends, we need to pray for them. We need to lift them up.
Just as Noah's faith was tested, your faith will likely be tested too as you raise a family in this ungodly world. Please, do not allow the pressures at work from relatives or others make you think the material things are more important than your family's relationship with Jehovah. Noah's neighbors lacked faith. They did not do what was needed to save their families. Instead, Jesus said they were so distracted by their daily lives, eating and drinking, getting married, that they took no note until the flood came and took them all away. In contrast, Noah took note. Noah acted in faith to save his household. Noah's actions saved his household. We can be sure it was not always easy for Noah to explain to his sons why they were building an ark and no one else was, or why building it was more important than anything else they had to do. The materialized wicked angels and their Nephilim sons were men of fame and admired by everyone for their superhuman capabilities. Think of the houses that Noah and his sons could have built for themselves. They certainly had the construction experience. Noah taught by example and kept his focus on saving his household from the coming flood. He likely had at times when he felt tired or overwhelmed with the sheer size and scope of building an ark. However, Noah did not allow his day-to-day life to crowd out his service to Jehovah.
If it is just like Noah's day, I need to show faith like he did.
Do you think they can show a creepier video? And I'm not sure if you could hear what the newscaster was discussing on the television that the guy was playing. I cut the majority of this video out, but I'm sure you won't be surprised.
So the first thing that Moses did, he rejected the proud, selfish thinking of that Egyptian world. He chose to be mistreated with the Israelites, who were slaves, rather than to align himself with a culture that dismissed Jehovah. Moses was a man of faith, and his faith shaped his decisions, not his culture, not community pressure, his faith. Moses received an assignment, a commission from Jehovah, and he viewed that commission as more valuable than anything that Egypt had to offer. He turned his back on the comforts of Egypt and aligned himself with Jehovah and the outworking of Jehovah's purpose. Moses had an unbreakable friendship with Jehovah. So can you. The quality of any friendship can be measured by the quality of communication that characterizes it.
Jesus called them serpents, offspring of vipers. Who is he talking about? Can the same sort of fear hold people back today from serving Jehovah as a disciple of God's Son, fearing the rejection or ridicule they might have to endure from neighbors, friends, or family? For example, suppose colleagues at work, schoolmates, or even members of your own family make caustic remarks about your beliefs as a witness of Jehovah. Instead of responding in kind by being equally sarcastic about their faith, show them that their comments have no effect on your peace and your pleasant demeanor.
Is Dad right?
we'd be ruined if I became a witness. But what would happen if I don't? Rob and Nick live in the same town with the same pressures. But they preach and support their families. Their joy is real. Do I really want fear of man to stop me from becoming Jesus' disciple?
Well, one must wonder why the publishers have so much opposition for being a Jehovah's Witness, friends, that the organization must continually remind them that they are to cause division from friends and families, that they are to separate them from the ones who have their eyes open. That's a way that they can control them, and this is a continual effort on the part of the organization.
Is our service to Jehovah based simply on routine and a sense of duty? Do we view it just as a chore? Or does our heart show that it's filled with appreciation and love for Jehovah? Fear of Jehovah is the beginning of wisdom. What is it that stops us from doing something that displeases Jehovah? It's our fear of Jehovah. Perhaps we could liken it to a chef who has a razor-sharp knife. Now, this knife, when used properly, can help him to attain all sorts of wonderful things. But if he misuses it, then he has a problem. So in a similar way, if our relationship is strong with Jehovah, there's no need for us to be shaking in our boots, as it were. But rather, we need to remember always that Jehovah is with us. And so a healthy fear of Jehovah means that we don't want to displease him in any way. How can we test whether or not our fear of Jehovah is at the right level? Well, we know that Satan and his world constantly throw things at us, temptations, wrong thinking, and so on. David's son, Absalom. He was proud about his hair. But in the end, it was his hair that caused him the problem, and he ended up dying because of his hair being caught in the branches. Or it could be someone is distracted and they're crossing the road. Again, the horn will help. So a horn used correctly can save lives. Likewise, our sounding out the message of the good news, our teaching others and telling them about the nearness of Jehovah's Day can result in lives being saved. Or on the other hand, if the sound is too soft that nobody can hear it, that likewise is a problem. So what about us? Do we need to think about how our proclamation of the good news is? Yes. Let's take not just the normal activities we're involved with our preaching work, but what about informal witnessing? Do you see the opportunity? Do you think, yes, I need to talk to this person, and nothing happens? The horn's not working. Let the one who thinks he is standing beware that he does not fall. Yes, just thinking everything is okay, there's no problems, thinking that we're just going on fine without testing ourselves and proving that we're in the truth, that can be a problem. Just like lack of maintenance to a vehicle can result in not only damage with regard to the vehicle, but also loss of life. How important then it is that we continue to keep testing whether or not we are in the faith or in the truth. If we do this checklist, go through it, and we see that somehow our godly devotion is not as strong as it should be, we're just doing things out of routine, but our love for Jehovah is no longer strong. Or if we find that our fear of Jehovah is not stopping us from doing what is wrong. Or if we're finding that we just are not thoroughly bearing witness to the good news, then we need to take action. What does it involve? Well, as it says here, first of all, identifying what the problem is, then readjusting, repairing, and in some cases, replacing activities. So brothers and sisters, let's always remember, no matter how long we've been in the truth, no matter what privileges we have, we need to keep looking at that checklist. Yes, we need to keep testing and proving that we are in the faith.
All right, friends, that's about it. Hopefully this was not too triggering for you. It was pretty awful. And hopefully you got a glimpse of what we were enduring as witnesses, what the underlying sinister purpose was, what their intention was to enslave us and control us through fear, friends. This was horrifying. What these youngsters, what these children are hearing, what they may be imitating. If one of their school friends taunts them in some way, it's just horrifying. But listen, friends, the God of the Bible is not like this. We cannot allow Watchtower to steal any more of us. We need to let go of that, of those lies, and we need to replace them with truth. Friends, we need to focus on the fact that Christ died for us, and through belief in the shed blood of Jesus Christ, we can have eternal life. That's the truth. We need to know who we truly are in the eyes of a holy God. And I wrote this devotional. It's on Amazon. It's basically the cost of printing and shipping. There's not much into this. It's $9 US, friends. But every day you get a truth about yourself. You get a scripture. You get a commentary, and then you have the opportunity to write down some thoughts that you may have. Focus on Christ, friends. Jesus says that I came to give you life, and I come to give you life abundantly. We are to have abundant life here. We're not supposed to cower in fear and wonder if we need to have a gun to protect ourselves. Anyway, friends, that's my recap for Friday afternoon session, and I wanted to thank you so much for watching, friends. I hope you have a great day.